Halloween festivities in Seoul give way to a living nightmare following a stampede in a popular nightlife area. Officials say more than 140 people have been killed.
Moscow pulls out of grain deal, accusing Ukraine of an attack on its Black Sea fleet, but the two sides go ahead with another prisoner exchange. Officials in Somalia say scores of people are dead and injured after 2 car bombs rocked the centre of the capital, Mogadishu.
Protesters in Italy, France and Germany marched to show their support for the Iranian people, as the country's government warns that Saturday is the last day of demonstrations on home soil.
At least 151 people have died in South Korea's capital after a stampede broke out during Halloween celebrations. Officials say revelers were crushed to death when a large crowd pushed forward in a narrow alleyway. Another 82 are injured. More than 400 emergency workers rushed to the scene. Police have restricted traffic to make way for ambulances, urging people in the area to go home. They say dozens of people received CPR on the streets. It's believed 100,000 people flocked to Itaewon area for the celebration, the biggest recorded since COVID-19 restrictions eased in South Korea.
Russia has announced that it's suspending its cooperation in the internationally brokered deal that allows grain to be exported from Ukrainian ports. Moscow took the action after accusing Ukraine of a massive drone attack on its Black Sea fleet in the Crimean port of Sebastopol. The Kremlin called the action terrorism and accused the UK of being involved. The preparation of this terrorist act and the training of the military personnel of the Ukrainian 73rd Special Centre for Maritime Operations were carried out under the guidance of British specialists located in the city of Ochakiv in Mykolaiv region of Ukraine. The Russian Defence Ministry also claimed on Saturday the British Navy took part in the planning, backup and carrying out of what he called a terrorist attack in the Baltic Sea on September 26th in an attempt to blow up the Nord Stream 1 and 2 gas pipelines. But the UK Ministry of Defence dismissed the claims. In a tweet it said, to detract from their disastrous handling of the illegal invasion of Ukraine, the Russian Ministry of Defence is resorting to peddling false claims on an epic scale. Going on to say the invented story says more about arguments going on inside the Russian government than it does about the West. Meanwhile, 52 Ukrainians, including 2 former defenders of the Azovstal steel plant, were released on Saturday as part of a prisoner exchange with Russia, according to Andrei Yermak, a senior official at Ukraine's presidential office. And the Ukrainian military on Saturday claimed that Russian forces were continuing their withdrawal from the key southern region of Kherson, ahead of an expected advance by Kyiv. Many people are believed to have been killed and injured when 2 explosions rocked the Somalian capital Mogadishu on Saturday. The resulting cloud of smoke was testament to the power of the blasts. A police spokesman said 2 car bombs exploded at a busy road junction in the city, leaving scores of civilian casualties. The attack came 5 years after a massive blast at the same location. It also happened on a day when the President, Prime Minister and other senior officials were meeting to discuss combating violent extremism, especially by the Al-Qaeda-affiliated Al-Shabaab group that often targets the capital. An Associated Press journalist at the scene reported many bodies and said they appeared to be civilians travelling on public transport. He said the second blast occurred in front of a busy restaurant.
Hundreds of people gathered in Rome on Saturday to protest against Iran's violent crackdown on demonstrations. Sparked by the death of Mahsa Amini more than 6 weeks ago, nationwide unrest has given way to anti-government rallies. So far, more than 270 people have been killed across 125 Iranian towns and cities.
We are not fighting for ourselves, we are fighting for the whole Middle East, we are fighting for the whole world. It's not a normal government at all. They try to normalize everything. They try to convince people around the world that this mandatory hijab is our culture. People are chose it by themselves. No, it's not. It's a big lie.
Meanwhile, crowds of people stepped out in Paris, Lyon and Toulouse in another show of solidarity. Many carried signs in French translating to women, life, freedom, 3 words at the forefront of Iran's anti-government protests. Moving to Berlin, some 1,600 people formed a human chain between the Victory Column and Brandenburg Gate, demanding the immediate release of all political prisoners in Iran. This woman says, "We are here today for freedom, for solidarity, for people who are dying in Iran. We are here today really for the world to hear us. We are the voice for Iranians, the poor little children, the young people who are dying." And in Dusseldorf and Cologne, protesters in the tens of thousands took part in 4 different demonstrations. The German public is also calling for the international community to tighten sanctions against the regime in Tehran.
Authorities in the Philippines now say that around 45 people died in a severe tropical storm and not 72, the figure reported earlier. They said it appeared local officials had overcounted, as they'd also relied on reports from village authorities. At least 42 people were swept away by rampaging floodwaters and were drowned or hit by debris-filled mudslides in 3 towns in the southern Maguindanao province on Thursday and Friday, according to a regional interior minister. Our house has been damaged from a previous typhoon, so I'm worried the storm will intensify because our home could be destroyed. We haven't fixed it yet. I'm afraid of the storm, but I need to go out and work, otherwise our pigs will go hungry if I don't feed them. Officials said as many as 60 villagers are feared missing and buried in huge mudslides laden with rocks, trees and debris. 5 other people died elsewhere from the onslaught of Tropical Storm Nalgae, which slammed into the eastern province of Karameen Sur early on Saturday.
Haiti has called on the UN to send peacekeeping troops to the island as it grapples with gang-induced violence and a deepening humanitarian crisis. It comes as looters ransacked a supermarket in the capital on Saturday and seized a fuel terminal in September, forcing many petrol stations to shut down. More than 96,000 people have fled their homes in Port-au-Prince as locals compete over dwindling supplies of fuel, water and basic goods. Police in Oslo have arrested 35 people from several countries for participating in a neo-Nazi demonstration. Members of the Nordic resistance movement interrupted a family cultural event on the streets of the capital before rallying outside Parliament buildings. Police say they clashed with the protesters when they refused to comply with their instructions and leave the area, but say no one was injured. A wreath laid at the tomb of the unknown soldier at the altar of the fatherland in Rome. Italy's Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni joined the traditional ceremony to pay tribute to all those who have sacrificed their lives for the nation. The far-right politician took office last week after winning a final confidence vote in favour of her coalition government. Crowds of people have gathered in Durban, South Africa for the official recognition of Zulu King Msuzulu Kazi Lethini by President Cyril Ramaphosa. Regiments dressed in traditional animal skins attended the ceremony after the monarch was crowned in another celebration last August. The coronation comes after a year of succession disputes within the royal family. While the king has no official powers, he heads the country's largest ethnic group of more than 12 million people. Swiss transport company Rhaetian Railway has claimed the record for the world's longest passenger train to mark 175 years of rail lines in the Alpine country. The 1.9-kilometre long engineering feat is composed of 25 smaller trains and journeyed along the scenic Albula-Bernina route through a series of 48 bridges, 22 tunnels and the world-famous Landbasser viaduct. Starting in Prida, some 50 kilometres from Italy's border, the journey covers some 9 kilometres of track before reaching its destination, Bergen, an hour or so later. The director for the company says he hopes the publicity will drum up fresh interest in train travel.
We had some troubles during Corona crisis. So we lost 30% of our turnover of our guests on the train. And so we tried to find a good event in order to increase the awareness of our beautiful UNESCO World Heritage route.
RHB's partners from the technology, service and tourism industries were aboard for the historic journey. Fashati says coordinating the line of 25 trains is paramount to controlling such a long convoy. Drivers are also needed to man the train at any one time.